Namaste, everyone. Welcome to the Cārvāka podcast. This is your host, Kushalmehra. So, as I decided to go to America from Canada on the 16th of September, Justin Trudeau decided to make things hard for me as and when I come back to Canada in the next month. And a few days ago, I was at a talk where I was invited as a speaker by the Coalition of Hindus of North America. And it was at that time that I had met Daniel, and Daniel also spoke and addressed the audience on that day. And I recently, Daniel's been in the news when it comes to the whole Justin Trudeau kerfuffle with India. And I reached out to Daniel. I was like, "Hey, man, it's time we spoke officially." So here he is. Daniel, welcome.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's been quite the ride. I mean, as soon as I saw what Justin Trudeau did, I was just like, this isn't going well. I put out a what the F tweet. It was quite spicy. And then that got retweeted. It got retweeted to some major BJP people. And then I'm like, okay. And then I just woke up the next morning. I just had in my head, I was just like so frustrated with Trudeau and this whole thing. I'm like, all right, I'm doing like a 101 thing. I was just like thinking of it. I just like grabbed the coffee in the morning and just ripped it. Like all right, here's it. And that was like the 14-minute video. That's what went like the super viral. And then like, you know, Indian TV and my thing with Rajdeep and just more and more. And then it's sort of been this whirlwind where, you know, I have, a bunch of just, I wake up every morning or go to bed and I wake up. It's just like WhatsApp, just people just like, it's like I'm a pretty girl in a dating app, just the DM, just every morning. So if you are an Indian TV producer and we've scheduled a thing, like you do need to send me a Zoom link 10 minutes beforehand because it's just constantly just pouring down. It's raining. But it's great. I'm having a lot of fun yelling at our government. I've been doing that for years, but India is now new to like, what the hell is this guy doing? You had the 2018 where it was like, what is this guy doing? But now it's like, what is he doing? Which are two separate levels of Justin Trudeau, which we can parse. But yeah, that's me. If you want a bit of background of where I am,
So tell everybody where you're from, where what you do, because nobody knows. They just keep hearing you right now.
Yeah, and like, yeah, it's just me, just like in a random T-shirt, just on Indian news, saying ridiculous things, like just about all these serious people. So I'm a stand-up comedian by trade. I went into stand-up comedy at Queen's University. I finished with a psych degree, never used that. But then I was like a comedian and like a tour guide for a while. And then in 2015, things started to get crazy in Canada, like free speech laws. We had a comedian go to the Supreme Court for telling a joke. It was crazy. So I met a political prisoner, refugee, other comedian from Iran, and like we were political nerds. Like I've always been, very, very cool. Like I have multiple math awards from middle school, guys. So we just went ham and like geopolitics. We went into that space. That went well. I ended up working at Tag TV, and then co-founding the National Telegraph. But I'm also a stand-up comedian at night. So it's this weird thing where I have these like weird journalistic credentials on these geopolitical things, like in Iran, now India. It's this weird thing. And then at nights I'm like, telling jokes. So some people might know me since like 2019 when I weighed in the Article 370 stuff. That was like my first big thing in India when I was just like, what's Pakistan talking about here? They were not happy. But then, so I've kind of been in a lot of different spheres for a while. And I was at Kona, so I've known some of the Hindu activists for some work. And then it just kind of exploded a couple days ago when I made that video. And then all the people asking me to come on TV, and then me just being a ridiculous human being on Indian TV, which is it was like half serious, and half the time it was like Canada's a joke, because it is. Like there's no way to take Canada seriously in 2023. It's impossible. So that's also why it's like, why isn't this guy wearing a suit? He's like, I'm coming on to talk about Canada. If I was coming to talk about like geopolitical relations with America or Iran and the Middle East, I would wear a suit on Indian television. But if it's Canada, there is some method to this madness of signaling to like, guys, calm down. It's just Canada. It's not a real place. Just pretend it doesn't exist. All right. I always tell Indian people, like, if you're in India and you're mad at Canada right now, best thing I can do, just pretend it's a TV show. Just every time you see Justin Trudeau get on TV, just pretend this is another episode of Canada. Like, what's he going to do now? What's he going to say? Is he going to do the thing again where he calls himself a genocidal leader and we have to pretend he's a genocidal maniac for a while? Who knows? What's he going to apologize for? Which cabinet minister is he sleeping with? Like, just treat it like a soap opera or a comedy or a dramedy. I think a dramedy would be the best frame of mind to have for Canada. And that's the message I'm trying to get out to the world is you can't take Justin Trudeau at his word in any reasonable capacity. And yeah, it kind of sucks that he went on TV and accused Narendra Modi of a clandestine assassination plot without any public evidence being put forward. But again, that's just standard Justin Trudeau Canada. None of it makes sense. None of it is serious. None of it is adult. There are no adults left in the room. So here we are.
But hang on, he slept with a minister more than once, which now I didn't know about this.
Well, I mean that's always the rumor on Justin Trudeau is he's with the ministers, and it's not just the ladies where the rumors go. I mean, I do have it on like thing, and no one's like we're Canada, so it's fine. It's not like oh get him, he's a thing, but it's like yeah, and now he's divorced his wife, which we all saw coming from a mile away.
Yeah.
And you know, so he's open to date someone within cabinet. I just my bets is like, will it be Seamus O'Regan or Melanie Jolie? That's where I'm at right now. And that's a very funny comment if you understand like deep level Canadian politics, but it's it's yeah. So okay, so that's I guess that's my background and how we got here. Is that
Yes. So maybe we could do a Canadian politics 101 first for the kids who are going to be watching this or listening to this audio version. So give everybody a Canadian politics 101. What are the different political parties? How do they differ from each other? And who's the most good looking one?
Okay. Canada is a parliamentary system. We run on a first past the post election system, which means of all the parties, whoever gets the most votes wins that particular seat, 338 seats. So you can theoretically win with 10% of the vote if everyone else gets 9%. No one's ever won at 10%, but it's just what it is. So from, let's say, right to left in Canada, like the people say they'll yell at me if I don't mention the PPC. PPC is a new party. It's more of a protest movement. There's a guy, Maxime Bernier, running around. They might make more noise on social media, and you're like, who are these guys? They're not a serious party. They're not even trying to win elections. They're more of a rally at this point. And I like a lot of the independent people who ran, but the leader, Maxime Bernier, and I don't really see eye to eye or get along. So you then have, of the serious parties, there are three now. The Conservative Party, which is like the center-right party, leader Pierre Poilievre, they're pretty good at foreign policy historically. This is Stephen Harper. I've spoken to many of them, you know, especially on, you know, Iran, Middle Eastern issues. I have not yet fully picked their brains recently on the Khalistani nonsense. It's hard to get a hold of them these days, but I will get back. Now, I will say all three major political parties are not free from political interference attempts. There have been attempts by different sects of radical Khalistanis to try and get into every different political parties. Some have been more successful other places than not. So the Conservatives are your sort of center right, but it's very Canadian. They're not like against gay marriage, or they're not trying to, you know, legislate on abortion or any of that. It's more sort of fiscal conservative, bring us back, lower the taxes, and the carp like that. That's sort of the rhetoric there is like, you know, economic stability is their big push there. Then you have the middle party, which is the Liberals. Now, the Liberals used to be more moderate before Justin Trudeau, before Stephen Harper, John Chrétien, Paul Martin. These guys balanced budgets. They were a bit more progressive, but like John Chrétien was probably more conservative philosophically than Pierre Poilievre, who's sort of the leader sort of on that libertarian conservative bent. So the Liberals now are ideologically progressive. They're hard left. It's a cult of personality for Justin Trudeau. All the adults have been kicked out of the room. And it's sort of it's a gender studies class. I mean, the Liberal Party is a gender studies class. You then have the NDP run by Hagmeet Singh, who is the representative of the Khalistan province in Canada, and he's the NDP used to be like a workers' party, but Hagmeet once became the Hagmeet show, it's become a sort of party for 20-year-old university girls who took one course on, you know, develop whatever studies and now think they understand the world. That's what it's for. So there's this like ignored working class union worker thing in Canada. That's a big whatever. And then you have the Bloc Québécois, which is like a Quebec specific party. They're French. They don't even try and understand the French. They go mad. You have the Green Party. They're like they're not that big. They have 2 seats though. They're another cult of personality for Elizabeth May. The Green Party's policy can be summed up as basically trees are good, Jews are bad. That's the Green Party in a nutshell. It's just a wacky left wing, save the environment, anti-human, but like infiltrated by crazy deep racist like Russian, like it's a mess. So that's the Canadian political spectrum. And when you go to vote, like those are your options. And I will say you can't vote for the Bloc Québécois in Ontario. They only run in Quebec, but they do get a good amount of seats in Quebec. So this is the Canadian political landscape. If you have a majority, you can pretty much rule with an iron fist. But the Liberals don't have a majority right now. They have a minority. They don't have over 50%. But the Liberals combined with the NDP now make a majority. So it's much worse than a Liberal majority. You have a Liberal government that must kowtow to Hagmeet and the NDP. So how does this play out? Well, when it comes to certain things like foreign policy directed at India, when the second most powerful man in the country is ideologically a Khalistani, it doesn't lead to productive relations with the Indian government, to say the least.
Yeah. So what is interesting in the entire discussion on Canada is people often compare the Canadian Conservative Party to the Republican Party of America. Can you explain to people how different the two are?
They are incredibly different. I mean, but one of the big things in Canada and the Canadian media and center-left media is scaremongering over America, right? So this is an American talking point. Look, the Conservatives, like listen, conservative ministers and high-ranking party officials, when they go to America, they will meet and talk with Republicans because that's how things work. But in Canada, they'll take a picture of the two of them together and create an insane conspiracy. But the Republicans, again, like there's a much more pro-life bent. The way the primary system is much more open, so that the people can kind of choose the leader of the Republicans a lot more, whereas the parties in Canada have a lot more internal control on the democratic mechanisms in their party. Like there are no laws against vote fixing or anything internally in the parties. Like it's sort of so the political establishment kind of has to okay a leader. You're not going to get a Donald Trump coming out of nowhere in the Canadian politics. Like a party would shut that down and wipe it away and just disqualify him without cause or for spurious cause, and that's the end of that. So the Conservatives are, you could say, more what you would say classically, to the left of the Republican Party. And also like Canadian interests and American interests do manifest differently. Like we're similar in the sense same TV, similar culture, but also very different in a lot of ways. And the Conservative Party does reflect that of Canada. Like there is no sort of isolationist bent built up in the Conservative Party. Like they're all your sort of, classic wear a suit, the people who are going ballistic in the comments section right now, they would call them neocons, the evil neocons. But that's sort of more where the Conservative Party is. It's more the classic, like have solid geopolitical thinking. Allies are good, enemies are bad. Like not allies are bad, enemies are good, which is our current philosophy for some unknown reason.
Yeah, and you know what the fascinating bit is that I first came to Canada in 2001, and when I came across the Canadian Conservatives, I thought they were the left-leaning party of Canada.
Yeah, they're also, if you want to understand the Conservatives, a big thing in the Conservative Party is most of them are cowards. They're absolute cowards. Accusations of racism don't work on the Liberal Party. Like the Liberal Party can outright, like Justin Trudeau could outright paint his entire face black, stick a banana down his pants, dance around on stage singing Deo, Deo, daylight come and you want to go home, and get away with it. And for anyone who thinks that's a joke, in Canada, Justin Trudeau actually painted his entire face black,
Yeah.
stuck a banana down his pants, and did that. And that's not the only time he's done blackface. He's done blackface so many times, he's lost count. So the accusations of racism just don't work on the Liberal Party, but they work on the Conservative Party. The Conservative Party is terrified of being called a racist, so they can be kowtowed and bullied into almost anything. Pierre Poilievre seems better than normal. Aaron O'Toole was the worst at this. The leader before him, absolute disaster. Poilievre is sort of came to prominence because he has a bit more charisma. He can make a 5-minute video about an economic issue and get people to actually engage with it. He's shown to sort of stand on some principles here and there. Now, people will yell, "Oh, where was he on these gender protests? Where was he here? Where was he on these, more thing?" No one's perfect, and I don't defend the Conservative Party when they're wrong. But if you just want an overview of how Canadian politics operate, Conservatives are scared of their own shadow, and they need a focus group to tell them everything they need to do. Conservative Party members, I don't think they're capable of wiping their own ass unless they can contact a focus group to say that 74% of Canadians would agree with this decision going forward, or like it's so the Conservative Party has sort of a time lapse delay to respond to a lot of things because they need their polling data to not hurt anyone's feelings or do anything too crazy. That's another element of Canadian politics.
So it's been since Monday, since Justin Trudeau basically said what he wanted to say to get away from it. Like, I've not checked the news since morning. So have the Canadians finally provided any evidence?
Publicly, no. We are still on the "you got to trust me, bro" system
Oh.
of foreign policy, pioneered by the great Winston Churchill when he, this is insanity. Again, I said from the beginning, if you're going to start a fight with an ally, one, don't. Two, if you're going to do it because our allies have the same alliances that we have, which means when we say India conducted a clandestine operation on Canadian soil, our allies have to believe us and back us. But when India says we unequivocally deny that, we did not do this, they're lying, their allies have to believe them. But they're the same people now. So who do we trust? Who is this going to go to? Is it going to go to Justin Trudeau when he says, "I'm not providing any public evidence. You just got to believe me that this guy, Khalistani leader on TV with the whose friends are all going kill, 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 kill. Oh, he's a religious leader and this is a great violation of sovereignty." Because again, it matters who gets killed in the international community. You could say not so much to Canada because it's a matter of sovereignty and whatever. But to the Americans, it matters who gets killed here because public perception matters. I've given this example. Niger, he is what he is, and he is fundamentally different than if there was like a beautiful 12-year-old girl, in a Khalistan dress. Little Miss Khalistan is just twirling in a field talking about peace, love, and Sikh independence, and then the next day she's gunned down. Right? That's something the international community would be like, who killed her? But the guy who's kill, 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 kill. And when we know the Khalistanis are involved often in gang violence, and his funeral, Khalistani flags waving everywhere, his friends, again, continuing with the Hindus get out of Canada, kill, kill, kill. It's not going to get the same geopolitical reaction because naturally, you're not going to get public support for someone who, it's not in the CBC will never show the Interpol red notice out for him, but Fox News will. CNN probably will. Like, they don't have any interest in keeping Justin Trudeau in power. So there's this is just bad geopolitics. If you want to learn geopolitics, follow this situation. Write down everything Canada has done, and then when you lead a country, do the opposite. And that's the best. That's better than any 4-year program at a fancy university in the West could get you.
So how much does an average Canadian, in your opinion, you meet so many average Canadians. I've met so many in my stay there and my traveling back and forth. How much do you think they understand what this gang problem is inside a section of the Punjabi Sikh community, the Jat Sikh community, for people who want it to be narrowed down to the core of the problem? How many people know this in Canada? Do they even understand what they're dealing with?
Majority no. No, I would say no. The mainstream media certainly. I mean, again, Hagmeet Singh is a religious leader and human rights activist in the CBC, Toronto Star, and the Toronto Star is #1 circulated newspaper. CBC is like the government news network that all Canadians pay for against their will for half of us. And again, Canadians don't like controversial topics, maybe a way to say it, because especially inter-community minority stuff, we don't want to pretend that that's a thing, right? Because we're a center-left country ideologically, and we want to pretend that systemic racism is the big problem, right? There's this vestigial racism left over from the British Empire that oppresses people based on skin tone. And did that exist in 18 whatever through 1950s? Yeah, I'm not saying that's the thing, but there are much bigger problems in the modern world when it comes to discrimination, and especially in Canada. It's the groups that we've allowed with impunity to foment radicalism against other minority groups because Canadian society, I think, was too polite and too scared to call out, because most Canadians, they see Khalistani versus they go Hindu, Sikh, and they don't know who the bad guy is. There's no easy answer. There's no, again, I've always going to think, if I went on a tirade about, killing you and Hindus, jail, right? Jail. It's very easy to understand me, bad guy, killing wrong. But when it's Khalistani, Panu, and friends threatening to kill you, we all get a bit scared and want to dig our head in the sand. We don't want to talk about gang violence. The Liberals don't want to ever talk about gang violence because they want to ban guns, and they want to pretend that guns commit crimes, and that the problem with gun violence is actually a gang problem. So they don't really want to deal with it. Also, the Khalistani affiliated human rights organizations, they will scream. They get free access to our TV networks. So there is a cabal of people lined up and ready to go, that if you call out this gang violence problem, if you call out the Khalistani problem, you call it whatever problems, deploy the World Sikh Organization on every major news network to tell you that you're wrong, you're racist, is bigotry. And it's really unfortunate, because the method of the Khalistanis is like all other radical elements, is hide themselves in the shroud of Sikhism, say they're Sikh human rights activists, Sikh religious leaders, advocate and foment violence to muddy that up with the rest of the Sikh population. So when there is blowback, it goes to the more general Sikh population. They feel like they're discriminated against. When you feel discriminated against, you look for a more in-group to go to, because that's basic human nature. And then the Khalistani movement can grow. And this is a really nefarious and noxious process. And again, it's not just the Khalistanis, Islamists too, all ideological hardliners do love this tactic of glomming onto often religious groups or different movements, declaring themselves sort of part of it to hide their radical inclinations. And it's really, really, really toxic, because again, I'll say I've been all over Indian media. Okay, every major news Indian network, it went viral. No Canadian mainstream media is even contacting me. The one Canadian network, it's a radio network, that allowed me on their program, owned by Sikhs. So that's sort of a microcosm of what we're dealing with.
No, what fascinates me, Daniel, is that there is this open video about one of the major allies of the current government in power, the Prime Minister Trudeau's ally, is this man Hagmeet Singh. All right, and I think it's very important we play this 2-minute 20-second clip shared by someone on Twitter, so that people understand what it is, because I know a lot of people who follow you might be watching this too, so maybe they don't know what Hagmeet Singh is. So let's play this.
How revolutionary they were to come up with these ideas. They're very, I say, the gangster ideas, right? They were ultimate revolutionaries.
It is about Sikh spaces and Sikh institutions, and it endorses violence as a legitimate form of resistance and survival.
Hagmeet Singh, born Jimmy Dhaliwal, is no stranger to extremist ideology. In February 2016, Mr. Hagmeet Singh was a featured speaker at the National Sikh Youth Federation, NSYF, in Southall, London, UK. This organization's leader, Mr. Shamsher Singh, has made statements regarding the use of violent means to achieve their aims.
Armed struggle is the only way. Investing in armed struggle and destabilizing India.
Yes, violent means to achieve their aims. The ends justify their means.
We have to create our independent country. So there will be violence when Khalistan is created, but this is inevitable.
These statements by Mr. Shamsher Singh were made as part of NSYF's official videos and previous to Mr. Hagmeet Singh accepting not only an invite, but also to be a featured speaker on the panel at the February 2016 event.
One is about sovereignty explicitly and uncompromisingly. It endorses the superiority of our culture, our language, and our ideals. It is about Sikh spaces and Sikh institutions. And it endorses violence as a legitimate form of resistance and survival, to rebuild and to become Azad.
It is noteworthy that Mr. Hagmeet Singh did not reject or rebut the message that Mr. Shamsher Singh made regarding violent means as an end to gaining sovereignty. In fact, in 2018, Mr. Hagmeet Singh doubled down.
And you're standing beside an individual who reportedly said that Sikh self-determination required taking up arms.
Well, again, there's a complexity to the situation. The issue is complex, and it's not easy to say I agree or disagree with that. It's important to understand the complexity of the scenario.
Legacy media only brought up his speech at a 2015 San Francisco Khalistani rally, but interestingly enough, neglected to show or mention the February 2016 video clip of his close association to Mr. Shamsher Singh. Mr. Hagmeet Singh is unrepentant.
Do you regret going to those rallies now?
No, I would go in the future.
So he would go again. He had said, obviously, he walked it all back later on, and he said he regrets this and he condemns the people involved in the bombings. But what is very interesting and is often missed in this entire thing is there was another person who was also sitting in the audience in this video, and that person's name is Ravi Singh, and he is the part of another organization called Khalsa Aid.
Okay.
And these are all intertwined. This is the entire network. Somebody does something. Somebody does the fighting for human rights lawyer bit. Somebody does, oh, we're just doing charity work.
Yeah,
And that's
yeah.
what.
The charity, I'm sort of familiar, not with, I'm more familiar with the bird's eye view of the Khalistanis, not so much the intricacies. I do know they run in the same circles as the Muslim Brotherhood and other radicals, but it's a catastrophe. I will say on the Hagmeet Singh thing, I will big ups to my colleague Wyatt Claypool. So his first thing on Indian television before him, this is the most gangster thing, most Wyatt thing ever. And for Canadians, Canadian political nerds, you're going to love this, but I'll explain it. So Hagmeet's the current leader of the NDP. So the former leader of the NDP, Tom Mulcair, was on before Wyatt. And he was fielding questions about Hagmeet Singh. Is he a Khalistani? And he said, no, Hagmeet Singh has denied it. And I believe him. He's not a Khalistani. And then Wyatt gets on the next segment, asks a question. He's like, no, we're going to go over. Like, he's lying. Like, it took Hagmeet Singh 3 times to admit that it was that the Air India bombing was a bad thing, which was the thing. Like, you can watch this. Like, it took him 3 tries to say blowing up an airline full of civilians was a bad thing and not a conspiracy done by the Indian government. So Wyatt just like went off and like, just absolutely wrecked Tom Mulcair, who's like this, mainstream political figure. It's like who's now a pundit. And it was just so beautiful to watch. I was laughing, and it was great. So big ups to Wyatt for absolutely shredding that narrative on Indian television, the first shot he got. But yeah, I mean, this is Canada where you have a leader of a political opposition who has legit power because they're in a quasi coalition. And here he is advocating for ethnic violence, which I thought is a bad thing. I thought racism bad and, ethnic violence also bad, but here he supports it. So again, like this is why I'm so gaslit. Like, I'm on the right wing in Canada, whatever, and this makes me racist. And who's calling me racist? The man who supports killing all the Hindus or killing some Hindus, right? I don't support mass murder of anyone. And every time someone asks me about mass murder, is it good or bad? I can, on the first try, every time say mass murder is bad. And name the particular religious group that you want to mass murder, and I can take the opposite view of don't mass murder. Like, I'm pretty good at it, as I think most people are, but not Hagmeet. And so Hagmeet, the man who's fine with blowing up a plane full of Hindus, and Justin Trudeau, who's in blackface, banana down the pants. These two are the ones who are fighting systemic racism. Again, this is the industrial level gaslighting that is Canadian politics. So this is why I tell people in India, if you try and learn Canadian politics too much and take it seriously, Like, it's a serious country, you will go insane. So less serious there, but yeah.
You know what is fascinating about Jagmeet Singh in particular? He recently was asked a question by someone on the recent attacks. Did you see this interview? I don't know if you've seen this one. I'm not sure, but it's a very interesting clip where Jagmeet was asked a question about the recent temple attacks. I don't know if you've seen this. Did you see this?
I have not seen this
one?
yet. No.
Oh,
Let's
so
do it.
you're gonna love this.
Oh, I'm ready to lose some brain cells. Let's go.
Let's go.
Hello, and today I'm with.
Jagmeet Singh.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
May I ask you, what are your thoughts about the recent Khalistani attack on a Hindu temple in Surrey?
We're opposed to any violence against communities. Communities shouldn't, like, we don't want to see violence against people. That's always wrong. And anytime there is those type of disruptions or violence, or communities are fighting each other, we lose sight of a real goal, which is to tackle the inequality in society. The fact that the super rich keep on getting richer and making everyone else fall behind. The fact that our grocery prices keep on going up and working people are struggling. So when there's violence or struggles between communities, we lose sight of the bigger problems, which are the problems that we all are in the fight together.
Mm-hmm. And in your opinion, what impact these incidents might have on relations between Canada and India?
Now the fun starts.
Well, in terms of relationships with India, I think India is a country that has a very abysmal human rights track record. And we've been long calling for a strong sanction and strong language that condemns the abuses of human rights, whether it's treatment of women in India systemically, there's abuse of the rights of women, whether it's the abuse of rights of minority communities based on religion, based on caste, there continues to be ongoing systemic violence. And the current government is a government that is clearly promoting a very divisive rhetoric. They're designing and building a country where there are promoting violence against minority communities, promoting a country that is not welcoming to people that are different, and that is a very big problem. And Canada and other international community members, countries should condemn that type of policy that is divisive, that is dividing people, and that is based on oppressing minority communities. That should be condemned.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So just think about it. This man, this turd of a human being. As you can see, my name is Hagmeet ka Dushman. Now let me explain it for the Canadians.
I knew
why
there was
call
something there.
myself-
I was waiting.
Yes. So Jagmeet, if you remember how he would introduce himself to his white audiences in Canada, he would say, just, you know how you say jug?
Yeah.
I'm Hug, right? Now here's the problem. Hug, in my language, which is also Jagmeet's language, which is Hindi Punjabi, means shit. Literally, it literally means poop. So that's why I say I am Hagmeet ka Dushman, as in I am the enemy of Jagmeet Singh. Now now, look at, we have played these two clips, right? And look at the irony. The reporter, the journalist asked, "What do you make of the Khalistani attacks on the Hindu temples?" He did not. Did you notice in the entire clip, he does not use the word Khalistani. He refuses to use the word Khalistani. He does not. He avoids it like a plague.
Yeah, because he's a Khalistani. I mean,
Yeah.
so okay. So I will say, after that clip, I'm down about 10 IQ points right now. So I apologize for the rest of this podcast being subpar, but yeah, it's insane. Oh, the problem, the real problem with Khalistani extremists attacking Hindus is it means we can't be talking about socializing grocery stores. Don't you know? Like, this is the most Jagmeet thing I've seen. Like, oh, the real problem is we need to be working together towards more socialism. Yeah, and listen, if you're gonna ransack a Hindu temple, at least spray some graffiti that Galen Weston makes too much money. Like, and this is another, and then he goes off on India, which is an abysmal human rights track record. Like, not perfect, no country is, but relative scale to the countries in the region. Let's just turn around to the map. India, Pakistan, there. Bangladesh, you want to get killed with a machete for giving an atheistic opinion? Oh, Myanmar, that's a functioning nation right now. China, ooh, that's another concentration camp filled. Afghanistan, oh, yes, the Taliban, noted feminist organization, the Taliban. And okay, then Sri Lanka, which never had any conflicts or ethnic violence ever. And like, what are we doing? What are we doing? The human rights record of India compared to literally every country that it borders or one is unequivocally better. And again, not perfect. Canada's human rights record, no country has a perfect record because we were made of millions, or in some cases, billions of people. And some of our countries or civilizations have lasted for like 200 or 150 years, 5,000. Like, yeah, okay, you know what? In 1357, there was a Hindu guy somewhere in what is now Mumbai, and he was very racist and very homophobic, and he was very mean to women. Sure, okay, but like again, but this is a man who's clearly ideologically Khalistani and is doing everything he can to undermine the nation of India using his position of power in Canada, and it's frustrating, it's annoying, and I don't want my political leaders spending their time fomenting ethnic tension and international, relations breaking down because of their hardline ideological nonsense. Like, get that out of our politics. Like, yeah, we're all allowed to have our things. Like, I'm far more pro-Israel than I am pro-Palestine, right? But if I was in office, my job is not to eliminate the Palestinians and glory. It's like, no, Canada, do what's good for Canada, and leave that behind. And yeah, you can talk about human rights records if you want. There's nothing essentially wrong with that. But this is a man who's actively trying to undermine our relationship with a global power. And I see this fight between India and Canada as just a fight between India and Justin Trudeau featuring Hagmeet Singh. Like or Hagmeet Singh, whatever it is.
So you pronounced it perfectly. By the way, I mean, I'm so proud of you. Yeah, you get one Tim Hortons from me for that.
Okay, but for India, that's our money is Tim Hortons money. We barter in donuts and coffee in Canada.
Yes.
So if I want to go to my friend's igloo, I would offer him a donut, and then he would give me a cookie in return, a smile cookie, and then this institutes a bonding relationship among Canadians, and then we go play hockey.
So for the record, are you Tim Hortons addict or hater?
It used to be a lot better. I'm one of those. They sold the recipe to the coffee. It's not as good as it used to be. Quality has declined recently. But I'm not either. Like I don't like to get into frivolous. Not like I hate when people have silly personality traits. Like I hate Starbucks. I don't do this. Is like that. It's like if I need coffee, like I have a coffee maker at my place, or if I need coffee when I'm out, like I can go to a coffee place. Like it's an energy thing. It's to keep me up at night so I can yell at Justin Trudeau on morning television in India. That's the purpose of coffee, is to let you yell at the government at all times of day. It doesn't need to be that fancy. Like that's what coffee was designed for in 1752 when it was invented by Sir Cophius Mauphius.
Yeah. So tell me now, the word on the street in India is that Justin Trudeau does the things he does is because he needs Hagmeet Singh. And so he will say anything to make sure that his government stays in power. How true is that?
Yeah, I think there is, it doesn't 100% explain what's going on here. It's not like, in politics, it's never simple. Like, oh, one thing happened here, this is the driving force of everything. But there is a certain amount of truth to that statement. Let me explain this is Canadian politics 202 now, to explain this quasi-coalition. There's never been a coalition between the Liberals and NDP for a very good reason for both parties. It's a first-past-the-post system, and they're kind of splitting votes. The Liberals' claim, and the way they kind of rule Canada, is they portray themselves as the moderate. Canadians don't like moderate politics and moderate politicians. They love politicians that can be called moderate in the media. Okay, so this image is very important for the Liberals to maintain, that we're the moderate ones. In order for that, they have to go look at the Conservatives. A conservative in 1974 said the N-word, therefore they're all racist. we're not racist. We're more understanding and left wing and progressive. Then they got to go turn to their left and say, look at these crazy socialists. They don't understand math. If you vote for them, they'll ruin the country. Come vote for us. We're the reasonable people. That's very important to liberals. Conversely, the NDP, they, in order to survive and gain votes and gain seats and keep their party alive, they need to be seen as, we're the outsiders. We're the no real Scotsman type thing with the socialism. Socialism has never been tried. We're going to try it again. The problem with the liberals and conservatives is they're the same party. They're corporate owned. They're owned by the banks. They're owned by the grocery stores, the whatever. Bring us into power and we'll be, ultra progressive. If those two people enter into a coalition, it makes the liberals look more radical. And then it makes conservatives able to market themselves as the moderate option to the mainstream. So they get decimated in the election. So this is why a coalition has really never been formed. And it's not an official coalition. They're just working together hand in glove, because a coalition means there'd be NDP members of cabinet. It's a slight technicality. It's a 99.9% coalition. It destroys both parties because they no longer have their narrative. They'll get wrecked in the next election. So, and it's going to do long-term damage. But this coalition was a Faustian bargain between Justin Trudeau and Hagmeet Singh, who both benefit. Because Justin Trudeau had so many scandals going. He had just invoked the Emergencies Act on peaceful protesters, which again, the CBC, who's got the evidence on India right now, a lot of the evidence cited by our intelligence sources to justify the use of the Emergencies Act, like martial law, was from a CBC article that ended up being retracted because it was outright asinine. So I wouldn't be shocked if 2 weeks from now, that CBC article that you're all mad at, there's severe edits and retractions that go on later down the road, because this would be par for the course in Canada. So the Hagmeet, Justin went. So Justin gets protection from all the scandals. This scandal, Chinese interference scandal, Emergencies Act scandal, because the ruling party sort of gets to make the jury, so they can have a jury of 9 people. 5 of the 9 will be Liberal or NDP, and the other 4 can be whoever. Oh, what's the jury, right? So Justin Trudeau gets to put himself on trial. What does Hagmeet get out of it? At 2025, Hagmeet qualifies for his pension. So the two of them have made a deal that keeps them in power to 2025, or out of jail, or out of controversy, or consequence-free maybe, and their parties will suffer. So I also bring this up because I've seen these two men, Justin and Hagmeet, destroy something that should mean something dear to them, the party they lead, which I don't like those parties, but have some pride, guys. Like, you're the leader of this party. I've seen them destroy their own party for personal gain. So would I be so shocked if there was some personal animosity that is bleeding into Canadian foreign policy, where it's more about Justin and Hagmeet than it is about Canada? It would not be the first time that happened.
Now, I find it very peculiar that you mentioned the Chinese interference story. This is, if my memory serves me correctly, this was when one member of parliament from Canada was allegedly shown to be in cahoots with the Chinese Communist Party, right? This is the story you're talking about, right?
It's much bigger. That's one element of it. That was the Han Dong, which was potentially linked to the CCP. There are leaks from intelligence that he was having backroom chats with the Chinese embassy when the two Michaels had been kidnapped, on advising them. Like that. That's a bit crazy. There was another thing where we do know that the CCP was infiltrating and using WeChats to. We do know they've been threatening dissidents, and there are Chinese CCP spies at university, and the kids don't feel safe if they're dissidents, and the kids can't speak out in class. I have professors who've told me crazy stories. So we had WeChats who would lie about the Conservative Party, saying they're going to revoke visas and ban Chinese people, and put out a lot of disinformation because the Liberals, they thought, were more friendly. There's also these Chinese CCP police stations, and Liberal donors have been there. Liberal MPs have been at these it's not good. And it's not just one thing. Like there was a Chinese diplomat who had threatened the family of a sitting MP, and Justin Trudeau wouldn't kick him out until we forced him to. So it's so much there. And in Canada, we're calling for an inquiry, a real inquiry into this. Justin Trudeau launched an inquiry. He appointed an old family friend who's a board member of the Trudeau Foundation to write a report, David Johnson. And he said, oh, the kid who grew up at my cottage, totally innocent, nothing to see here. So we're trying to push for a real inquiry, the talk around foreign interference. So this scandal has given the Liberals, I don't know if this is intentionally, unintentionally, a good way to muddy the waters around foreign interference by saying, hey, Justin's so strong on foreign interference because he kicked out an Indian diplomat right away. Didn't you want him to kick out a diplomat? Now he's kicking a diplomat. Yeah, I wanted you to kick a diplomat when we had evidence that that diplomat was threatening the family members of sitting MPs, right? So when you have evidence that a diplomat is threatening and harassing people in your country, yeah, you have to kick them out. When you have no public evidence that there may be a potential link to the Indian government in the killing of a man with an Interpol red notice out for him, these are two different scenarios, apples and oranges. But this stuff is being conflated in Canadian media. There are the true anon class. This is the conspiracy theorists for Justin Trudeau, who will take anything said, right? They'll take the CBC article and they're interpreting the CBC article to say there's multiple Canadian intelligence sources and multiple American intelligence sources, and the Five Eyes were in on it. And it's like, that's not what anyone's saying. If you read what the article actually said, it's like someone who is a source to the CBC writer knows people who've heard that they potentially asked Indian officials about things and they didn't deny it, right? But you don't know the context of what was said and what was there. So this is hearsay. This is like a double hearsay, and this is the smoking gun we have is double hearsay in which the source is unnamed. So I mean, I understand why India is so mad, because it's gaslighting and it's ridiculous, and you have Canadian media figures pretending that this is, oh, look, we found the smoking gun. I call Inspector Perot. We've got one here. Like it's maddening, and I empathize with Indians who are waking up to the nonsense that is modern political discourse in Canada. But it's a wild ride.
So I I don't understand what the Canadians were thinking, right? So first they accuse the Indian government on the House of Commons by no less than the Prime Minister. Then your Foreign Minister Jolie, she says we have expelled an Indian diplomat. India responds by expelling one. I mean, you should have seen the face of your diplomat. It was a 4-minute in and out. That was, I mean, India. And see, people need to understand, India never does this.
No,
India actually doesn't do this. It's not a part of Indian foreign policy. In fact, one of the criticisms of Indian foreign policy by Indians has been they're too docile. And now India has upped the ante till the extent of India cancelling visas, fresh issuance of visas. So sorry, Daniel, if you wanted to visit India, you can't right now. But that's the stand India has taken. And then
I'll just vacation in Pakistan.
So yeah, that's where we are at right now. What I worry about is, I'm sorry about this, but Canada and India, if you look at the trading dynamics too, right? India is number 9 when it comes to Canada's trading partners. We're the 9th biggest trading partner for Canada. Canada, on the other hand, is not even in the top 30 of trading partners of India. Point number 2, the entire university system of Canada, especially Ontario. In fact, I shared the report by the Auditor General of 2021 for the province of Ontario, which categorically states that 68% of the revenue for the universities of Canada comes from international students, 41 or 42% of whom are Indians. What the hell was Canada thinking?
Oh, you think Canada was thinking? This is your problem. They're not thinking. I don't think Justin Trudeau can think 2 steps ahead of the consequences of his actions. So yeah, you're right. We can't cancel the visas because listen, no, this isn't from a jingoistic point of view, like cancel the visas because I don't want any more Indians coming in here. It's like, well, if we cancel the visas and the university system collapses, that could help us, right? I mean, sorry, Indian kids coming to Canada, like you don't need a political science degree from a Canadian university. It's not the thing it used to be. The inflation in the education market is gone amok, and the universities in Canada are corrupted with the diversity, equity, inclusion stuff, where their budget's blown out on that. So if the university systems financially collapse, it actually might be a good thing for Western civilization, because they might have to cut back on all the administrators and diversity people and all the nonsense BS, sociology, which is just fancy gender studies, and the other gender studies. Stop and go back to math, history, science, philosophy, the classics of the university, and they might need to be reformed. So that's my like great hope and optimism in this, because I don't see any plausible win for Canada here. But the only hypothetical, maybe like, Hail Mary 2% this could happen is we cancel visas, the university system collapses, and then the universities have to fix themselves. So it's not like I don't want any brown people here. It's like, well, if we could just, if you could take one for the team for a bit, and just give us a few years to just blow it up and build it back up, and then you can come to a real university. And learn about stuff and things instead of like how to become a different gender. So that's my like, what do I think of optimistically at night? Oh, it would be nice if Canada gets like a backdoor quasi win through some crazy scenario. But again, you're right. Like we don't have leverage over India. That's like the first thing I said is like like what the fuck tweet was, this is crazy, like, that's insane. And then it's like, we don't have leverage. You can't go against it with no leverage. This is, I mean, the equivalent I can give you here of just how stupid this is imagine going and storming Normandy without any weapons. That was the plan, right? If you replace Commander Eisenhower with Commander Trudeau, the first wave gets to Normandy with 0 weapons and gets wiped out. And then what do we do with the second wave after watching that happen? No weapons still. And like, so it's like, yes, I'm a Canadian. I want to defeat the Axis powers. I'm on Team Allies, like India was. Like, give the guys guns at least. Like, you can't do this. Like, have a plan. Have the report ready to go. Wait an extra month. Like, did this need to be done right now? Did it really? If you're going to do it, like, wait another month. Get a rock solid report. Contact the Americans before you do this. Make sure the Five Eyes support you. Like, build support internationally and then go into it and use leverage, because Canada alone has no leverage. This is going to war with a picture of a gun instead of a gun, and trying to, show the German troops, look at this, be scared, and well, that's kind of what's happened in this diplomatic spat. And it's, I mean, it didn't take a genius to predict that this wasn't going to go well for Canada off the outset. You just had to know a bit about both countries, just a very little bit to know where this one's going. And yeah, I mean, my doomsday prediction for Canadian diplomacy has started to manifest. And this is what happens when you vote for ideologues. Justin and Hagmeet are both ideologues, whether it be Khalistan, and I think Hagmeet, and they're both leftist ideologues too. That Hagmeet's going on, he's gonna tax the grocery stores and save Canada. Like, ideologues can be dangerous when they get office, because they have the sense of moral righteousness, which I think Trudeau has more than anyone in the world. And this gives them this hubris where they think they can get away with anything, and they end up making decisions that harm their entire country. And that's where, like, I get mad. I see this as unforgivable. Like, you have a duty to Canada, and part of your duty as the Prime Minister is to put us in positions to win and succeed. And yes, I believe in protecting the sovereign integrity of Canada. I want Canada to be a country that is so strong and respected that no country would ever think of conducting a clandestine operation in Canada here. But in order to get there, we have to be able to take care. Like, how did this guy get a visa? We can't have people running around with the kill, kill, kill. We need to be able to take care of that. And listen, if Canada had taken care of the Khalistanis after the Air India bombing, if they didn't let them all out of jail, if it wasn't one person going to jail for 15 minutes, we wouldn't be in this situation. If we had sort of said, cut it out, like the Khalistani movement, you have no credibility in Canada. Yes, you're allowed to advocate for whatever you want, but Khalistan is an enemy of Canada because you conducted a terrorist operation on our soil, the worst one, and continued to assassinate or attempt to assassinate Indian diplomats and Canadian officials. You have been violent. You've been un-Canadian. So you don't have any legitimacy to me as a Canadian, to the Khalistani movement. And again, not Sikh Canadians, whatever. It's like the Khalistani movement in Canada Khalistan should be no. Khalistan is anti-Canadian because they conducted terrorist attacks on Canadian soil. This isn't Brazil where the Khalistanis haven't done anything here. So I understand the Indian government saying Khalistan's bad because they attack us. I get that. But they've also conducted terrorism on our soil against our people. So they are our enemies. Like it should be that simple. But the Trudeau government came in, Bill Blair and then Trudeau, they took the Khalistanis off the terrorism list, instead replaced it with people who advocate and do violence for Sikh separatism in particular. Like, so they muddied the waters and sort of and allowed the Khalistanis to go back on the street with their Khalistani flags. And again, more enabling and more enabling and more enabling has led for this problem to get worse and worse and worse and worse. So yeah, again, I want Canada to be strong. I want it to be taken seriously. I don't want governments to feel like they have to conduct clandestine operations against terrorists in our country. I'd rather this be a country where, you know, if I was the prime minister, the Indian government could pick up the phone and be like, hey, we got an Interpol red notice on this guy. And I would see a video of him being like, oh, kill, kill, kill. Yeah, okay, we'll put a stop to this. That would have been my response. And then we'd have good relations. But again, we didn't tackle our own problems. We let a problem fester for decades. And it was a cancerous growth in our society, and it metastasized. It's now out of it. It's now an international problem. So I get it. And the Indian government, the way they shut down visas is they're saying, yeah, Canada doesn't have any serious national security screening, which we don't. Justin Trudeau's a man who, when the Conservatives criticized him for bringing back ISIS fighters, he said, you're Islamophobic, because apparently ISIS is the representative of Islam to Justin Trudeau. And, quote, Justin Trudeau, the reason we need ISIS fighters returning is because they can be a powerful voice for de-radicalization. ISIS fighters will de-radicalize the Islamists. You looked confused. No, you don't understand the plan. Kushal, come on. It was a very good plan, and I'm not making this up. Part of the de-radicalization program to de-radicalize ISIS fighters was conducting poetry exercises. This was I have to find it somewhere on my old laptop. I have to find it. I'll send it to you. I once wrote a poem. I actually, when I saw this years ago, I wrote a de-radicalization poem.
Yeah.
I have to find it. I'll send it to you if you want. But
we need to read this poetry when I'm back in Toronto in October. We need to read this poetry.
Yeah, But by the way, the program was funded and no poems ever got written. So Canada, like this was a serious Justin Trudeau counterterrorism operation. Bring in the ISIS fighters, just bring them back to Canada, read them some poems that we never ended up writing, and that will fix it. So yeah, this country needs better visa screening. So yeah, I'm not surprised that a country eventually said, no, we don't trust Canada's visa system. We're going to do our own screening because, you know, if we just trust the Canadians, Khalistanis can come in and out of Canada with impunity. And I actually do think there's a significant amount of truth to that. That if you do trust the Canadian vetting system, we don't vet for Khalistani nonsense. And if you're a country that, like India, who has a problem with Khalistani nonsense and violence, you would want to do your own screening on people coming into your country. And, you know, it's sad. I don't like it. I feel bad for the average, you know, Hindu Canadian who's got a wedding to go to in Mumbai in 8 months, and they want their visa in a month from now, but they just kind of procrastinate. Like I feel bad. Like, you know, it sucks, but I'm also I understand where the Indian government is coming from on this, because I've been screaming about this for years too, and not just on the Khalistani issue. Again, like I wrote a poem. In fact, I think I wrote the only de-radicalization poem in the country because the Liberals never got around to it. Why didn't I get millions of dollars in government funding? You know what? I'm putting this poem out, and I want $1 million, Justin. Actually, $10.5 million. That's how much money he gave Omar Khadr, a convicted terrorist who killed an American soldier and then was put in Guantanamo Bay by the Americans. And then we just gave him $10.5 million because we're so...
Yeah, people talking about Canadian vetting. See, I went to Canada to study in 2001 when 9/11 happened, right? So people don't remember the 9/11 bombers. They all entered America from where? from Canada. They all came from Canada. They were there in Canada and then they came into America. Most of see people don't realize now there's a good side to it also. I don't want to make it all, Canada bashing, because in fact I'll tell you one of the most pleasant experiences you have is when you drive from Detroit to Windsor. You have the most pleasant experience because the Canadians are genuinely nice people. The immigration system, everyone is so nice to you, and you just want to see the other side of it. Just drive from Windsor to Detroit, where the American immigration is out to eat you up. It's like it's a privilege to enter the United States of America, kind of a thing. And Canadians are amazing people, but yeah. And talking about amazing disclosures, I don't know if you've seen this picture. I wanted to show it, and now then we'll stop and take some live viewer questions too. So guess who this is? So this is Hagmeet Singh, as people see on the image, and he is, with whom? He's with Parvkar Dulai. He is partying with Parvkar Dulai. And who is Parvkar Dulai? He is the business partner of Bhagat Singh Brar. And I'm reading a report from globalnews.ca, by the way. So he's on a no-fly list, and so is Parvkar Singh Dulai. He's also on the no-fly list, and Hagmeet Singh is partying with them. So it's very normal for Hagmeet. Look at him. Look at him. He's having a good time, isn't he?
Yeah, they're feeding each other ice cream. It's just random. They don't know each other. They're just acquaintances. They just, sometimes, this is Canadian media. Jagmeet would be like, yeah, sometimes we just meet people and we feed each other ice cream in a romantic style.
Yeah.
That's what I do with all my
Yeah,
acquaintances.
we're Punjabis, right? We're Punjabis. So Punjabis are very, very gracious. We just stuff people with ice cream. But it is what it is. I mean, it's a sad scenario. I don't know. So let's start with the first question asked by my friend. He's in America, by the way. He asks, how cucked is the CBC for Trudeau?
Very. There's a picture of Rosemary Barton, the lead anchor. She just loves him. They slobber over him. So the CBC gets $1.4 billion a year of Canadian taxpayer money. They slant heavily left. I used to do a show before the pandemic where on a YouTube channel, I would call it the worst of the CBC. I would watch 1 hour of CBC News that day. Then I would do like a 5 to 10 minute video called the worst of the CBC, where I would do the worst story of the day. So what story did they mess up the worst and then fix it? And then what story did they ignore and should have talked about? And then I rate each hour of the CBC on the Rosemary Barton scale of bias, who is their lead anchor. So 10 Rosemary Bartons is a very biased bad broadcast. 1 Rosemary Barton is like is good, right? So that was like my thing. So very, and I made a whole thing of it. So the CBC is it's basically the Liberal Party's press secretary.
All right, that's interesting. And okay, somebody has asked, the next Canadian election is in 2025. That's 2 years, and that is a long time in any democracy. Will this diplomatic episode even be remembered come election time? That's a good question.
It's a good question, and I can't give you a definitive answer to there. I mean, will I remember it? Yeah. I mean, this is that. There's sort of a cumulative effect, though. Like, the Canadians don't like being made a fool of in the international. If he loses this, I mean, right now the Canadian media is pretending he's winning, right? Because it's just what we do. But reality will eventually set in. So if he loses this, I do think it will affect people, because Canadians love this. As I might have said to you at some point, like, Canadians love the fact that we are seen as America's reasonable younger brother. Canadians love to tell you that when Americans go traveling, they put Canadian flags in a backpack. Canadians love being loved by the world. And we are generally kind and empathetic people, and we want to be friends with India. We want to be friends with everyone. So when Justin Trudeau undermines this notion of we're this calm, reasonable, well-loved country, that will affect his votership. Like, these sort of liberal elites, you want to call them, the urbanites, upper middle class people in Toronto and Ottawa, Montreal, they won't like the destruction of their soft little Canada's so cozy, nothing bad ever happens here mentality. So I do think it is a cumulative effect, right? It will stack on top of a bunch of things. It will stack on the SNC-Lavalin scandal. It will stack on the WE scandal. It will stack on the Emergencies Act scandal. It will stack on the Chinese foreign interference scandal. And it will stack. Like, I expect more Trudeau scandals by the time we get to 2025. Like, I think he's going to be kind of in a bit of a party mode in his last year. Like, I could see him kind of going wild, throwing out contracts to friends willy nilly. So will it be remembered? It depends just how badly this goes, and will fixing the diplomatic ties between India be an election issue? I think if it was smart, if they were smart, they would. I mean, I had said back in 2019. The Andrew Scheer time, he was asked a question, like, they all asked this question, like, what will you do when you become prime minister? And I said, like, a great answer would have been, day one, our relationship with India improves. He should have just said that, because of the disastrous trip to foolish India, because Canadians didn't like that, didn't like him making a fool of himself in India. Don't be seen as a joke and a laughing stock. Don't make the world laugh at us. Didn't like that. So if Scheer had just said, well, yeah, day one, relations improve with India, that would have been a pretty good line in Canadian politics and sort of brought it back up. But often, hopefully better with Poilievre now, they're not great at messaging and throwing shots and playing winning politics. So if it was up to me, and if I end up getting 40 million followers and everyone in Canada is following me, yeah, this is going to be an election issue. But if the mainstream media gets to dictate the pace, again, they're all sycophantic to Trudeau, so this is a story that doesn't look good on him. So the media wants to stop talking about this as soon as they possibly can, but they can't stop talking about it if India is not stop talking about it. So again, that might have been a bit of a complicated non-answer, but I hope it was an informative non-answer.
No, I understand. Now, see, this is a very serious question from an Indian who is asking, with the current PM of Canada at the helm, what steps can be taken for the normalization of ties and dialing down from both sides? See, it's very clear. What I appreciate about this question is he's not just saying the Canadian side, he's saying both sides. Even India needs to tone down a bit.
Well, I mean, I try and do that by going on, Indian TV and sort of giving a more of a Canadian. I think it's a bit more understanding. I mean, the narrative I hope to get at that I think is the most productive is this is a Justin and Jagmeet versus India thing and not so much a Canada thing. And I think, there are a lot of Canadians getting involved and speaking up, and Canadians are really curious. And like, yes, we like to dig our heads in the sand, but Canadians are actually precocious and do like learning about other cultures and other things. And we're an intelligent people. Like, we Canadians in the right context can be put and do amazing things, storm Vimy Ridge, become elite shock troop warriors to help defeat the Axis powers. Like, Canadians are very capable when push comes to shove. And I think the best way is if you're an Indian person, I would encourage you to engage as respectfully as this man has here, with Canadians, feel it out, and again, steelman people's arguments, try and understand a bit more of Canada. And this is something I can tell you for working with different groups. The more you legitimately try to actually understand someone else, listen to their point of view, understand their issue from their perspective and might be an outsider perspective, the more likely that person is to then turn around and be interested in what you have to say and what your particular thing are. So whether that's like, I'm Canadian or I'm Jewish or I'm this or that, right? If you want better understanding, it starts with a legitimate attempt for you. Like, if you want someone else to understand you, like, the onus is on you, I'd say first, to go and legitimately attempt to understand someone else. And that puts them in the best situation to listen to you again. So that's always been my philosophy on building ties between people. And I would say this is a Justin and Jagmeet problem, or Justin and Hagmeet problem. And we're sorry about it. Canadians are always quick to say sorry. Sorry, guys. Mea culpa. I didn't vote for these ding dongs, but they wave the same flag that I do. So.
Hey, and can I add on that? Look, I've been visiting Canada since 2001. I've gone to many parts of the world. I'm recording this podcast from the United States of America. So before any American gets offended, no offense intended. I've been to the United Kingdom. I've been to 9 Western European countries. I've been to Australia. The nicest Westerners I've met in my life are Canadians. The nicest.
Have you been to
the
East Coast?
nicest people.
Have you been to East Coast?
Yes.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's another planet.
Yeah.
If you don't know the East Coast of Canada, this is real. I've done this. If you stop in the middle of the road, no crosswalk, and you look the other way, all the cars stop in Eastern Canada to let you cross the street. Like, you can do that. If you're Indian and you want to see something hilarious, if you're used to like the Mumbai, this is cars driven by, go to Halifax.
Yes.
Walk down the street, see some cars, stop, look at the other side of the street, and watch traffic stop for you. And you can just do that all day. Be like, where am I? But that's Eastern Canada.
Yeah, that's how nice people are. People don't realize these things. Okay, this is a very interesting question. I think this person is following Canadian politics from India and is looking at the current march also that's happening. So this person writes, there seems to be a relationship between runaway wokeism in Canada with post-truth culture and subjective assertions being passed off as valid. Do you think it may not be any surprise that Trudeau is less concerned about hard evidence now?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's this person's obviously quite well in depth with what you would call wokeism culture, and you nailed the terminology, buddy. And I think you're right. So I mean, I will generalize that concept. He's basically saying, do you think there's an element of radical leftism driving some of this decision making, which says, power is privilege, and right, the outcome is more important than, let's say, the truth, right? This sort of rejection of truth. Truth is postmodern. Truth is relative. What is important is moral purity and righteousness. Yeah, I do think there's a strong element of that influencing Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau is a man who often scolds our allies if they have sort of center-right governments, right? So when there are governments that are allied with us that don't really go along with this woke stuff, Giorgia Meloni in Italy, the Polish prime minister, he'll lecture them in their own countries and hector them, shake. You need more gender studies in your kindergartens. But again, this is the same guy who won't shake his finger at Pakistan for, I have a list of 4,000 things, but you get what I mean. This is, so yes, this is a sort of I do think there's a certain element of the post-truth, postmodern, and then you add that intersectionality. Like, well, the reason that these specific minority groups are Pakistan is because they're being oppressed, or they're just silly brown and they don't know any better, and they were tricked by the British Empire into doing whatever it is they're doing right now. So we can't really hold them accountable for their actions because they're not really fully functioning grown adults like us here in the progressive circle at York University.
Okay, so this is a question again. See, I have a lot of Canadian followers and Indian followers, so the questions are a mixed bag. So now I'm going to another Indian's question.
Used to it.
Yeah. So this one is from an Indian again, because this is a growing concern in India, and I think this is also part of a larger victimhood narrative across the world, thanks to the Americans. But in the case of Indians, I think a lot of it is backed by studies now that show that Western media, by and large, is very anti-India. Yeah. Now, if you're someone who understands the media landscape, at least in Canada, like, how does an Indian actually approach this subject and try to explain to people, listen, we're not evil people that you paint us all the time?
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I kind of got into Indian politics so hard on the Kashmir thing is when I saw the people, criticizing the Article 370 repeal, like the ISNA, Linda Sarsour, Bernie Sanders. I saw some of the worst people in the world start to hector India. And the way they were doing it, I'm like, oh, this is Palestine. Like, I've seen Palestinian propaganda before because, I get the anti-Semitic stuff. Like, I was like, oh, I've seen this before. Okay, I know what's going on. I can detect a smear campaign. So then I went and found out, what's actually going on. In the media, it's the same thing where you have, let's say in the academic circles as well, right? You have this push where you have an anti-India element growing, and it can be explained through a Western lens better than an Indian lens here. Because I think you nailed it. This is imported American culture war nonsense going on here. But you have the institutions which have been infiltrated by hardline ideologues for decades, okay? We're getting funding from Qatar, from Pakistan, from Iran, from Saudi Arabia, from all these nefarious actors. And yeah, so someone who's associated with Jamaat-e-Islami or Hezb Tahrir, or when they, fund Canadian universities, oh, what's their big problem? Kashmiri human rights. Where? Pakistan occupied Kashmir? No, that doesn't exist. That's just Pakistan, right? No, Kashmir, right? So the way Kashmiri human rights, works in in universe, same way the Palestinian human rights organizations work, where they're not so much about human rights, but attacking Indians or Jews. And they've been infiltrated progressive circles because they learn the language of progressives, right? Cry racism, cry this, cry that. And then you add Modi on top of it. And Modi comes in, and you had been ruled by Congress, which is the left-wing party, for a long time, and he comes in and he's right-wing. And that makes him Donald Trump. And by extension, that makes him the devil, because that's, the landscape there. So you have this confluence of factors where you have, the Khalistanis, the Islamists, they're anti-India because either Kashmir, the Punjabi separation, Pakistan is geopolitically an enemy, and Iran, another Islamist, the Islamic Republic there. So you have these forces for decades been festering up. I think the Hindi community kind of was asleep at the wheel and didn't realize the threat of ideological infiltration to the institutions. I can say that because I watched the Jewish community be absolutely asleep at the wheel in the face of the exact same problem. So I think this has sort of come up where you have this view of India, and I can teach a master's level history course on India at York University right now. It's 1 minute. Indian civilization was founded by the Mughal Empire. Then the British came and they did colonialism, which was very, very, very bad. And all the bad things that are happening in India are because of colonialism. And then there's this guy called Gandhi, and he sat down and he was very nice. So there was a country. And now Modi's in charge, and he's very right-wing, and it's bad, and it's a far-right Hindu nationalist nation. And the real India is more akin to a York University's gender studies class than these bigots would have you believe. So there you go. You now have a degree in history from York University.
And Hindus are casteist.
Caste system. Yeah, the caste system was there. I forgot. Yeah, the caste system. Yeah, sorry. You had that's the master's level. I gave you an honors degree, and Kushal is giving you the master's level in India.
And it's frustrating. But okay, this is another Canadian asking this question. Outside of Surrey and Brampton, do you see now the Khalistanis popping their radical heads in other provinces? This is a concern of a Canadian. Why I'm saying this is, recently another gangster was shot in Winnipeg. Now, do you see this network out now popping out and creating problems for Canada even more?
Last month, I was in Niagara Falls doing comedy with my buddies. We did a great show, sold it out. Yucks, Niagara Falls, go back to the hotel. We're like, let's rip a podcast. We're doing a podcast. We hadn't eaten. It's comedy. You're on the road. We order some burritos from Uber Eats. The guy, the driver, his name is Fanu, F-N-U. And one of my army goes, yeah, that means he's a convicted criminal, right? They didn't put a name not found or whatever. So we joke, this burrito's taking forever to get here. We do the whole podcast before it gets there. My other buddies text him, hey, Fanu, how are you? And then so we're like waiting outside for it. The guy shows up in like a rundown car, gets out, guy in a turban, scariest guy you've ever seen, like full of tattoos, like gun tattoos, like on his hands, like dead stare. It's like, this is a Khalistani gangster or a reformed Khalistani gangster in Niagara Falls. It's like again, name not found. It will read. So yeah, I found obviously another one in Niagara Falls. So that's not Brampton. And that's not Surrey. So listen, if you enable a movement and it's a radical movement that wants to grow, it's going to grow. Like, that's nature. Like, what magic is keeping the Khalistanis out of Toronto or out of Ottawa or out of, the Northwest Territories or Alberta? Right? So
yeah. So what this question is again from someone in Canada. In absolute numbers, Hindus are more than the Sikh community in Canada. And recently there was a very disturbing video. I think the question is in that context, so I'm explaining the context of it. There is a extremely disturbing video made by some American Sikh called Pannu, where he says Indo-Canadians, go back to India, you are this, you are that, and they literally put a target on his head. And the Canadian, I think Human Rights Center or something, had to literally put out a couple of tweets explaining, no, Hindus, you are safe in Canada. Like under Justin Trudeau, what the person is saying is, Trudeau is now at a point that he's clearly alienated the Hindu community, and I'll explain why. Because since the last 1 year, Daniel, I know personally of 8 incidents of actual temple attacks, of Khalistanis putting graffiti and writing Khalistan Zindabad, Hindustan Murdabad, I mean, Hail Khalistan and down India, or India should die. We've seen Khalistanis putting actual targets on Indian diplomats, putting targets on their back, putting their photos, putting their addresses, saying rewards will be given to these people. And the Hindu, now this video comes out after this entire incident. So where should the Hindu Canadians go now? Like, will the Conservative Party stand up for them, or basically there is no hope for Hindus in Canada?
I do think there's hope. I do think the Conservative Party, if properly motivated, if they see an uprise, if they kind of, I think if the Hindu community raises their voice and to a point where they're heard, that will bring the politicians to them, right? Because politicians want votes. And this is a winning thing for the Conservative Party, right? Terrorism bad, attacks on Hindus bad. They can win here. So I do see, this is why I was so happy with the conference. And I'm starting to see this more in the Hindu community, sort of get our voice out there. Like, it's not enough to just have, a good life, get your kids educated, get them a good job, and go on. Like, the night is dark and full of terrors. There are bad guys in the world, and some of them are malicious and mean you harm, and they have to be confronted somehow. And maybe that's not everyone's job, but you're much more likely to survive as a people, society, civilization, Canadians, Hindus, anyway, if you all kind of do your part and stand up for yourselves, and it makes it easier for the next person to do so. I'll say one. I'm going to give you a bit of a 10-minute warning. I got to be on TV at 11:30. But my message of solidarity to Canadians and Hindus here is, it's not just you. Again, I'm Jewish. I've seen Jewish synagogues vandalized consistently. The Free Palestine. When George Floyd was killed, human rights activists broke into a synagogue in Montreal, desecrated it, ripped up a Torah, flushed it down the toilet because Israel was responsible for George Floyd. But they're not anti-Semitic. They're just ripping up a Torah and flushing it down the toilet inside a synagogue that they vandalized. Not anti-Semitism at all. In Canada, we had with this thing, a bunch of churches were burned down because of this story of the Indigenous kids that ended up being not true. And Justin Trudeau was understanding of why people were burning down churches. It's very understandable. You burn down a church. So it's anyone who doesn't fit within the narrative of the radical left. Your most sacred thing is not safe to you in Canada. And it sucks. It does. It's horrible. And I grew up Jewish. There's always had to been a security guard at every Jewish synagogue since I was born, right? And the Canadian government will now protect you from white people, which is good. But when it's not that simple on the thing, and if it's not Christian white people attacking you in Canada, then the Canadian government's kind of, and the justice system, the police, they don't want to touch it. They don't want to get called racist. And I mean, I speak to so many cops, and I've spoke to RCMP people. Like, I've had RCMP people complain to me over the last years. They spend more time learning about diversity training than how to accurately do intelligence reporting and their jobs. And they're beyond it. And the regular cops, the beat cops, sergeants, they all want to retire because, like, the depolicing, the police boards are all ideologically corrupted. Like, a Peel Region Police Board. Like, I mean, it's not even like just like the radicalism. It's the head in the sand ideology that is so incumbent. Like, once you get into the political level in policing in almost anywhere in the country, there's this notion of this cowardice happens. Like, once it's beat cop, good. Consent to a sergeant, good. Puts it to the lieutenant. All right, we got a case going against Mr. Kill. It goes up to captain. This guy has to face the media camera. It's done, right? So that's the world we live in. And what can Hindus do? I mean, understand you're not alone, but find commonality and understand the problem, and maybe articulate. I would say make it more broad. Like, talk about synagogues being desecrated. Talk about churches being burned down. Talk about Hindu temples being attacked, and they're being attacked. Why? Because the radical left is tolerant of hatred when it doesn't, when it benefits their narrative. And that's something that a lot of people, Canadians and other people, can understand, because there's a lot of people who suffer from the intersectional chart. They don't do well on the flow chart, and they suffer too. So build alliances, and the Hindu community, like, understand your strength as like a potential ally in the geopolitical current world. Like, there's 1 billion Hindus, right? That's important. Like, like, I'll tell you from the Jewish perspective, like, we're outnumbered by, the Muslims by a factor of 1,000 to 1, right? 14 million Jews, 1.4 billion Muslims, and all the Muslim nations have attacked Israel. We haven't had great relationships for a while. but you could see why we're so out leveraged in the international media, because it's 1 billion to 1 here. You find allies, oh, there's 1 billion people in India. This could level the playing field. Maybe have again, it benefits you guys. So Hindus, Indians, Canadians, just stand up for yourself. Be a bit more vocal. Come to an event, look for a Hindu organization to join, or look for a non-Hindu that organization to join that fits your values. Get a bit involved. Cowardice is contagious, but so is courage. So I would implore you, make the decision, choose to stand up for yourself. And by doing so, you make it easier for the next person.
Fair enough. And it's very interesting you mentioned this, and somebody had asked the question, will neo-Nazis in Canada be allowed to do referendums to create a white ethno-state? Will Trudeau allow that in the name of freedom of speech? And I guess you answered it in a very good way. Before we wrap it up, Daniel, I'll leave you with the last words. So like I said, I love Canada, I love Canadians, so we want India and Canada to have good relations. So from you're way younger than I am. I've become very old. I got white hair now. I'm 42 years old now. But what would you say to Indians living in Indian origin people living in Canada who are Canadians, or Indians living in India? I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, I would say, one, thank you for the support. It's been really nice, and the kind messages, and especially the lack of death threats this time around. It's been really good. So last word is trying to understand. As ridiculous as I can be, I hope I can give you some perspective on the Canadian mindset. And my advice would be to generally try and understand us, because Canadians are so primed to being empathetic and understanding, and they really, really, really do want to understand you, but also be sensitive of where they're coming from. Now, also, if it's a radical socialist, okay, whatever. But we're talking about the average everyday Canadian, not chronically online. So get involved. Meet other people. Just try and be a bit more public, and be, sort of righteous and honorable in the way you go about it. Don't say, hey, the Khalistanis did this, so we're going to do this back to them, right? You're not going to win that way. The deck is stacked against you, right? Find a way to make your point clearly, strongly, and in a way that can bring other people in. Have a message that goes outside of your particular group, so people can glom onto it and then join you. And then when they do, they'll understand you better. And in order to get them to understand you, you have to try and, understanding's a two-way street. Always keep that in mind.
It was an absolute pleasure to host you, and I know this will not be our last conversation. We're going to be
Awesome.
doing a lot more because I'm going to be coming to Canada. Only assumption is Justin Trudeau bans me from coming from Canada. I'm assuming that's not going to happen, but I look forward to hopefully meet you before I go to in Toronto, in and around Toronto again. And every year we should plan to do something.
Let's try and do something live. Let's host an event.
Yep.
Let's yell.
Let's entertain some Canadians. What I like about you is you're from a comedy background, so you have humor. You don't take yourself seriously. I try to take myself not so seriously too. As you saw in my Kona talk, I was like, I don't want to be serious, man. People take themselves too seriously, and I love India. I love Canada too. I like human beings in general, and it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for coming, brother.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, guys, we'll wrap today's podcast up. Once again, in the description of the podcast, all of Daniel's social media details are there. So I would urge all of you, go follow him on social media. And as you guys know, this is a member-driven podcast. I am able to do what I want to do is because of you, the members. So if you can, please support my podcast. Please become a member. If you want to buy the Cārvāka podcast merch, go to kushalmehra.com. Or if you can't do any of that, just like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave the comments. If you're an audio listener, leave a rating on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you are. I'll see you guys next time. Take care. Bye.